verses 2 through 5, 5a. The tongue of destruction, 5b through 8. The tongue of inconsistency, 9 through 12. And then the tongue of wisdom will be in 13 through 18. So that's how I've kind of taken the chapter apart, if you will. Now, my thesis for this is, I think, simple. It reads this way. The tongue of man is the greatest external revealer of the true inward reality of the heart. The tongue is the greatest internal or external revealer of the true inward reality of the heart. I know what people say, and we looked at this in chapter 2, but you don't know my heart. You can't judge me. You don't know who I am. I know a whole lot by how you speak. I know a whole lot about myself because of how I speak. It's a whole lot being revealed. You see the guy, we used the illustration going down the road and you get cut off in traffic and you yell and scream and say all kind of things. It's because there's aggravation in your heart. I assure you this, it's not that guy's fault that you're talking that way. It's a revealer of the pressure and the affliction of God being pressed upon you, and it brings out what's actually in there. He's not bringing out that which doesn't exist. He's bringing out that which is really there. And so the difficulties, the afflictions, and the tensions that we deal with and how those things come out with the tongue, those are indicators for us. I want this to help you. I want you to make that connection and say, I must be speaking this way because my heart is not where it needs to be with God. Once I know that, now I can spend less time trying to figure out what's wrong with my wife, my kids, and my grandkids, and my coworkers, and the people who drive on 730 and honk and throw beer bottles at the preacher on the bicycle. And I can spend less time trying to figure out what's wrong with them and try to figure out what's wrong with me. You see that? You may not like this theology, but God would even cause somebody to throw stuff at me, honk at me, and call me a homosexual because I'm wearing spandex in order to test the reality of my own heart. Okay? Those things do happen, by the way. Those were true illustrations. But they test. How do I respond? Well, it's a lot better on a bicycle because you can't catch them. You know, can't catch them. But what surfaces here tells me what's in here. Or some people dump dirt on the road in front of you or something, yeah. But it surfaces what's in the heart. This is for our good, because if I will accept that's what's really there, then I know what I need work on. God, help me with the pride that's in my heart, the selfishness that's in my heart, the depression in my heart, the anxiety in my heart. All of these things, God, you're exposing. God, these are where I need help. God, help me through these things that I can be a better servant of you for my marriage, for my family, for my church. Let's go ahead and just address church for just a couple of minutes. How often has it been that you have been influenced and developed an opinion and a position about a church because of what Joe Bob said? Well, that church over there, I'll tell you right now, a bunch of knotheads over there. You want me to tell you what they did? And because of words, we develop positions that may or may not even be true about a particular church. And opinions and positions have been developed about this church because somebody said this and somebody said this and somebody says the other thing. We get very clouded with words that are spoken, especially gossip, slander, and backbiting about other people. And here's the human nature. We actually know it's wrong for those people to be talking about a church or a person, but yet we want to hear it. Really? They did what? What else happened? Why are you asking that? Because you're feeding off the false use of the tongue, and it's also a revealer of your heart longing for negative information for whatever purpose you may use it for. Be very, very cautious with our tongue. Now, we come here to verse 1. Verse 1. Not many of you should become teachers, my brothers, for you know that we who teach will be judged with a greater strictness or with a greater judgment. The office of a teacher may look attractive. I've seen it countless times over through the years. In a sense, people would clamor for a position in the church. They would desire to be in the position of a teacher in order that they can have influence upon some people, in order maybe perhaps pridefully that they will have some esteem. I'm so-and-so teacher at my church. I'm the chief supreme pastor of the church, or I'm the senior pastor, bishop, apostle pastor, or whatever. We clamor for all of this position. And James is very clear. Do not, many of you, long to be in this spot. I can tell you, it's not what it may look like at times. There's much more that comes with this position than many people ever want to carry. A person in a position of teaching or preaching is going to have to give an account for the souls that he has affected in his ministry. That is a weight that is far heavier than what you might actually imagine. You're going to have to give an account, I will, for every word preached from this pulpit. The effects it's had upon your lives, the way in which it's directed your families and your children, the counsel that has been given. I must give an account to God for that. It's not like, oh yeah, this is a great day. That's a very scary idea. So not many of you should desire to be in that position of teachers, my brothers, because there's going to be a stricter judgment. The office of teacher or pastor brings a great responsibility. In Hebrews chapter 13 and verse 17, and he must give an account for your souls. Listen and obey your leaders. Do so where they can do what they do joyfully, because they have to give an account for your soul. I must stand before the living God and give an account for the status or the position of your soul. I believe that same thing when it comes to marriage. By the way, men, this is not Father's Day, but I'm just putting these in because they're there. And it's this. The reason that your bride is the way that your bride is because of you. That's why. We bear, as a husband, the spiritual direction upon our wives. If we're not leading properly, that's why they're not living out the way that they're supposed to. We bear the responsibility for them. Perhaps if your wife has no joy, has no sense of meaningful purpose in her life, perhaps it's because you're being too harsh with her. It'd be the very case. And perhaps if you would be a better husband to your wife, you would find that your wife would be more full of joy, more full of contentment, and you would find that things are a lot more of a blessing at your home. We have to be very cautious, just as the pastor has an effect upon the church, or a teacher within a classroom, so a husband in a marriage, so parents with children, so grandparents with grandchildren. It affects those that we're over. Now, the office of a teacher will give an account for those he has influenced. Well, currently going on, whether you keep up or not, I must say these things. Currently going on right now is divisions and discussions about the Trinity. Okay? In current contemporary evangelicalism, the Trinity. Why? Because a well-known speaker by the name of T.D. Jakes holds to a position of modalism, which is a denial of the Trinity. I would call it heresy, a heretical belief. It is a belief, modalism is this: God the Father was in the Old Testament, God the Son was in the New Testament, and then God the Spirit is now in our age. And they just come in three different modes, but does not understand three distinct persons of the Trinity in one unity. And so this is a heretical teaching. And right now we have discussing around evangelicalism, and it's like, why don't we all just get along? Why don't we all just, it's okay. He has a little different belief. He has a little different belief. Let's just all get along and work with this. No, you cannot do this. A person who is teaching heretical doctrine, that heretical teaching is affecting those that are under him and giving them false teaching. If a man is going to teach against what has been held for thousands and thousands of years according to the Scripture, that man is to be dealt with. That man is to be rebuked. That man is to be called to repentance. He is not to be brought into a room for a panel discussion that is funded by Lifeway, whom the Southern Baptist Church gives money to. It's not. If it's heretical, and it should be called thus. By the way, you may have seen in the news this week, I don't know a whole lot about Tim Tebow, but I respect him for this. Tim Tebow has a manager that sends him here and there, and he'll speak and share his testimony. He was invited to a heretical place where the preacher there is by the name of Rod Parsley, and when Tebow found out about it, he said, I won't go, because my presence there may look like I condone his heretical teaching. He must make a stand. Why? Because I'm going to give an account for those that I influence. And so if I go stand on a stage condoning a heretic, then I've affected those that are under me. We must be very cautious with this. Now, having said that, and I could say much more, let us hear the scriptures in regards to the false teachers. According to the prophet Ezekiel, Son of man, I have made you a watchman for the house of Israel. Whenever you hear a word from my mouth, you shall give them warning from me. Ezekiel, whatever I say, you say. I warn them, you warn them. If I say to the wicked, you shall die, and you give him no warning, you don't speak to warn the wicked from his wicked way in order to save his life, that wicked person is going to die in his iniquity, but his blood I'm going to require at your hand. Thus, when you have a preacher who smiles and everything's positive, and he says, I will not talk about sin, he is going to be accountable for every soul under his ministry who ends up in hell because he didn't warn them of the depravity of sin, the effects of sin, and the coming judgment of God. But if you warn the wicked and he does not turn from his wickedness or from his wicked way, he's going to die in his iniquity, but you have delivered your soul. The prophet is responsible to communicate what God says to communicate, and he better do so because he's going to give an account to God. Since there was such erroneous and misleading and confusing theology in Ephesus, this is what Paul told Timothy. Paul tells the young preacher, he says, as I urged you when I was going to Macedonia, remain at Ephesus. Why? Why do you need to remain at Ephesus, Timothy? So that you may charge certain people not to teach any different doctrine. Timothy, man up. Stand up as a man of God and say, you're not teaching that stuff here. It's the end. It's over. You must charge them not to teach that, because if they teach that false doctrine in Ephesus, it's going to cloud the minds of the people and they're going to be led astray. Timothy, this idea of pastoring is a difficult work. You must stand up and take the heat and warn them and charge them. No. As in some churches, bring in some kind of false doctrine or false teaching. It's like, well, we just all need to get along. No, get that out of here. We can't have that.